Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about control statements in Java. We'll go over what they are used for, how and when to use different types of control statements, and with some concrete examples. My name is Amandeep. I'm a Java software developer and I love sharing what I have learned. So if you like this video, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any new Java tutorial. Every Java program is having a proper execution flow in which statements will be executed at the runtime. Control statements provide you to control the execution flow of the code that is based on some conditions. You can change the execution flow of the program. There are basically three types of such statements. First one is selection statements, then iterative statements and transfer statements. Selection statement consists of if else blocks, switch statements, and in case of iterative statements we have different kind of loops which are while, do while, for each. And transfer statements are the statements which will transfer the control of program from one point to another point. The Java switch statement execute one statement from multiple conditions. It is like if else if ladder. The switch statement works with byte, short, int, long, enum types, string and some wrapper types as well. Since Java 7, you can use strings in the switch statement also. In other words, switch statement tests the equality of the variable against multiple values. Now let's take an example of switch statement also. For that, let's take a variable int, which is number. Let's assign its value to its value as 5. Okay, after that, how to use switch statement. So you can write switch statement and IDE will also be helping you in that case. You can see Eclipse has already provided me a template kind of thing here. Okay, so here what we want to do, switch what condition we need to check, which variable we want to check. We want to check number here, and what value we want to see. Suppose if the number value is 10, we want to print as its value is 10. Okay, value is 10, and after that we need to put a break statement that we will be discussing just very shortly. Okay, after that we can add multiple cases here. If the value is 20 and we want to print 20, so for that let me just copy this. Okay, so in the end, if you see, it has added one default block. So if none of the values satisfy the condition, it will go inside the default block. We don't want to throw any exception, but we just want to print that it is invalid number. Okay, so these are our requirement. If 10, we want to print value is 10. If 20, we want to print value is 20. And if neither 10 nor 20, we want to print as it's an invalid number. Now let's try to execute it. As the number is 5, so I am expecting invalid number. So executing it as a Java application. Yes, save it. So it's an invalid number. Okay, so let me just change its value to 10 and try to run it again. Value is 10. So this is how switch statement works. It is similar to else if ladder, but we cannot test the greater than or less than values. It will exactly match the value and execute the statements given inside these parentheses. Now let's start with if statement. The Java if statement is used to test the condition. It checks Boolean condition if it is true or false. There are different types of if conditions as well, like a single if statement, if else statement, if else if ladder, and nested if statement. So for the simplest example, let's try to test the single if statement first. So for that, let's have an integer marks and we want to check if a student has procured marks more than 40, then we want to print it as that student has passed the exam. So let's suppose int marks is 40. So how to write a if condition? So it is like if and then these round brackets. Inside that we need to provide a statement which will turn out to be either true or false. So now what we want to check, if marks are greater than or equal to 40, what we want to say, we want to print sorry, we want to print that student has passed. Okay, so just save it and execute the program. You will be able to see it is printing as pass. So now if student has not been able to get 40 marks, then we can use the other component of if else statement, which is else. So here after if, I can write else, and here I can say that student is not able to get 40 marks, so we will term it as fail. I'll just save it and run it again. It is passed because marks are 40, so let's change it to 35 and run the program again. Then we are getting fail. So these are the basic examples how to use if and else. But suppose we want to print the grades of student as well. So in that case, what we want to do, if student has procured marks between 40 to 50, we want to print its grade as C. From 50 to 60, we want to print grade as B, and above 60, we want to mark the grade as A. Now to check the grades, we will use else if letters. So here what I am doing, for the marks between 40 to 50, what we want to print as grade C. Marks less than 50. So in addition to pass, we want to print it as pass and grade B, grade C. Okay, so similarly, just after if, I will add else if, and here also I need to add a condition. So what will be in that condition, instead of 40 to 50, what I will be providing 50 to 60. So whatever whichever student is getting marks between 50 to 60, that is also pass, but their grade will be B. So similar to that, the last grade A students, for that also we will add an else if block. So here we don't need to mention two conditions, we can only mention greater than or equal to 60. They are grade A student. So let's run the program. Currently it's 35, so it will again go to the else and fail. Let's try to run it again. So it is failing. Now let's test if user has or the student is able to get marks greater than 40 but less than 50. So let's say 44. It should print pass and grade C. You can see it has printed pass and grade C. Now let's check the other two conditions also. So now you student is able to get 59 marks, but it is less than 60 and greater than 50, so it should print grade B with pass. Okay, and now after 60, anything greater than or equal to 60, student will be pass with grade A. So with this you can see else if ladder is also explained, but inside this also, inside if you want to have your another conditions check, you want to add your another if else block, that also can be done. That is known as nested else if. That will work in the similar fashion. Now let's move to the iterative statements. Iterative statements consist of while loop, do while loop, and for loop, and also for each loop for the collections. Now let's see a while loop. So before that, let's take an integer variable that we will be using, counter, which is equal to 1. Okay, now how to use while loop? Simple, while, then some condition, and what we want to execute based on that condition. So in the while loop, we want to see while counter is less than or equal to 10. Then what we want to do, we want to just print the value of counter. And there is one more thing, we must have an update of counter as well within the while loop, otherwise it will be an infinite loop. If I do not write anything, it will keep on printing counter as 1. and until that memory is full, out of memory is there. So it will keep on printing counter as 1. So for that, what we need to do, sorry, counter plus plus. So we have seen in our previous tutorials what it will do. Counter plus plus, it will increase the value of counter by 1. Now let's try to run it and see the output. We can see it started with counter as 1, printed 1, and then updated the counter value to 2. Then again it checked its value in this line, line number 7. Counter was less than or equal to 10 because its value was 2. Again it entered inside the while loop and printed out the value 2, and again updated the counter to one more value. So in the end, if you see, after printing 10, it has increased its value to 11 from line number 9. And when it checked the while condition at line number 7, this turns out to be false, due to which it was unable to enter inside the while loop and exited the program. So similar to this, we have do while loop as well. A do while loop, what it will do, it will execute the statement at least once. If you see in while, first it is checking the condition and then executing a set of statements. But in case of do while, first it will execute the statement for once and then it will start checking the condition. So how it will be done? It will be like do and then set of statements, and in the end it will check with the while what is the condition. So let me just comment out this code, otherwise it will be a long code, long output in the console. So what we want to do, we want to do the similar thing here also. Let me just copy it. We want to execute do print the counter value and increment the counter value, and in the while condition what we want to check, if counter is less than or equal to 10. Okay, so it should behave similar to while loop, but the only difference is here, like if uh, at the first point itself condition is not satisfying, do while will still be executing these set of statements because it is checking the condition in the end, but while will not do that. Now let's try to run this, and you can see we are getting the same output, the numbers from 1 to 10. Now let's move to the for loop. For loop is most widely used iterative statement. So let me just comment out these, both of these, while and do while loop. Okay, so how the for loop will work? We don't need any. It will have its own local iterative variable. You can say, let me just try to write it. For, this is the syntax. Int I is equal to 0 and I less than or equal to 10 and I plus plus. I will explain whole of this, and in the end it will have a set of statements which will be enclosed inside these curly braces. So what we want to print, again we just want to print the value of I. Suppose we want to print the value of I. So for loop, it will start with the keyword for, and in the round bracket we will have three different components. First one is this initializing the local counter variable for this for loop. Second one is checking the boundary condition, where we are checking if I is less than or equal to 10, and third one will be updation of that variable. It can be either incremental or decremental. Okay, so in this case what we want to do, we want to check for I from 0 to 10, or let's do I from 1 to 10. So I from 1 to 10, by incrementing 1 every time. What we want to do, we want to print I from 1 to 10 in this case. Now let's just execute it. You can see we are able to get the similar output using a for loop also. So this is how for loop works. So you can have like any variable values here also, because most of the time you will not have the hard coded values. You will be applying uh, the boundary conditions in your programs from some variable values which are coming from, which can be coming from some other program components. Okay, so similar to this we have one more type of for loop, which is for each. So that actually requires a knowledge of collection as well. So we will not be discussing that in this lecture. We will be doing it after we have learned the collection framework. Now the last type is transfer statements. So these are three different statements: break, continue, and return. When a break statement is encountered inside a loop, the loop is immediately terminated and program control resumes at the next statement following the loop. So suppose we have this for loop. So we will be using this for loop for our break and continue statement. So what we want to see, if I value is 5, we just want to get out of this for loop. Okay. So how we are checking, if I is equal to 5, what we want to do, we just want to break. I can write it without parentheses also, but it's always a good practice to enclose the if else blocks inside the parentheses. So what it will do, it will go inside the for loop. It will keep on checking whether the I is having value 5. Whenever the value of I is reached 5, it will go outside the loop and it will not execute any further statements inside the for loop, or do any increment in the variable. So let's see. So I'm expecting that it should print till 4, from 1 to 4. Let's see. Okay, so here you can see it has printed from 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so this is how a break statement works. Next is continue statements. So in Java, continue statement is used to continue the loop if continues the current flow of the program and skips the remaining code at the specified conditions. What it means? So we are currently inside this for loop and printing all the values for I, but we do not want to print the value at 4, but we want to continue with the loop. So what we will doing, so we will check if I is equal to 4, and instead of breaking, we will do continue. So what it will do, it will keep on checking the value of I. If it is 4, then it will skip all the statements given after this, which is like system.out.println for I, and move to the next iteration. Okay, so for that clarity, let me just comment this code also. Okay, so now what I'm expecting, it will print 1, 2, 3, and after that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now let's see. So you can see 1, 2, 3, and after that, when it has encountered I is equal to 4, and it has seen that continue is there, so it has skipped that printing of 4 from here and moved to the next iteration, which is I is equal to 5. Next and the last topic is Java return keyword. So Java return keyword is used to complete the execution of a method, the return followed by the appropriate value that is returned to the caller. This value depends on the method return type, like it can be integer or anything. Now to make the code more clear, I have moved the logic for break and continue to a specific static method, which we are calling here. Okay. For our return example, I need to create another method. So I'm just creating private static and return type. So what I need to mention return type. So let's have a method to add two numbers. So it will return int add, and it will take two parameters also, int num1, int num2. Okay, so here as you can see, IDE is already giving me an error that the method must return a result of type int. So we will do that. So here what we are returning, return num1 plus num2. So here it should match the actual value, actual type that we have mentioned here. So if I try to return some string, suppose I want to return Aman, it will give me an error that there is a type mismatch. You cannot convert from string to int because I am returning string. Okay, so let's return this. So this is how the return will work. It will return the control back to the caller and the value which is after that. Okay, now let's call it. And for calling it also, we need to have a variable at the caller side as well. So let's say int sum is equal to, we will call add, and then we will provide two parameters inside that. Okay, why this is giving me an error? Okay, I have forgot to enter the comma. Okay, now some integer is a variable which will be storing the value returning from this add method. So for the console clarity, let me comment this call and let's try to execute this. It should return sum as 30. Now we want to also see what is the value of sum. So for that I have added one more sysof statement. Okay, let's try to execute it. So the sum is 30. This is how the return statement work. It has taken both the arguments num1, num2, added them and returned this value to the calling function. This is the calling line and this value whichever it is returning will be assigned to sum. So this also we need to consider that sum should also be the same type which is returned from the function. So if I try to make it a string, it will not work. It will give me an error that there is a type mismatch. So if string it is returning string, then I have to take it as a string. That will be all for this video. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to get all the updates on new tutorial videos. Thank you.